On this vote, the yeas are 216, the nays are 210. The resolution is adopted. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. The office of Speaker of the House of the United States House of Representatives is hereby declared vacant.
You said it would win. What did you say? Congressman Robinson said you mocked his Christian faith.
Stanchion.
Congressman, will you resign?
What's next?
Congressman, will you resign? Will you resign? Will you put yourself back on the ballot?
What comes next for you?
You're gonna run for Speaker?
What comes next for you?
Valadeo. Nay. Van Drew.
Nobody pull a fire alarm. No.
No. Van Dyne. Kelly of Pennsylvania.
Absolutely not.
Nay. Kana.
Yes.
Yay. Kemlager Dove.
Yes.
Yay. Captor. Yay.
On this vote, the yeas are 216, the nays are 210. The resolution is adopted. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. The office of Speaker of the House of the United States House of Representatives is hereby declared vacant.
Mr. Speaker, my friend from Oklahoma says that my colleagues and I who don't support Kevin McCarthy would plunge the House and the country into chaos. Chaos is Speaker McCarthy. Chaos is somebody who we cannot trust with their word. The one thing that the White House, House Democrats, and many of us on the conservative side of the Republican caucus would argue is that the thing we have in common, Kevin McCarthy said something to all of us at one point or another that he didn't really mean and never intended to live up to.
My good friend from Louisiana, Mr. Scalise.
Gentleman from Louisiana.
How many of us came here because we thought this job was going to be easy? How many of us thought the task ahead of us to address the problems of this country was going to be easy? One thing we did know is that if we were going to finally start confronting problems that had been ignored for years and years and years, we had to change the way that this place worked. And one thing Speaker McCarthy embraced from day one is to start making those kind of changes to this institution, opening up the process, allowing members to be more engaged, having amendments come to the floor, single subject bills, doing appropriations bills. Yes, making that happen overnight is not something that happens automatically, but it started to happen, and we are now seeing the fruits of it. Just last week,
Accordingly, pursuant to Clause 12A of Rule 1, the Chair declares the House in recess, subject to the call of the Chair.
James Matthews from Sky News, Mr. Bates. What have you achieved today?
Well, I mean, we heard Speaker McCarthy say that he wanted us to bring it on, so I guess we did.
You said you didn't think we were going to succeed.
So you have paralyzed the House of Representatives today. To whose benefit? People have called you a narcissist. People say that it's to your benefit alone. Is it to the benefit of you and to Donald Trump?
It's the benefit of this country that we have a better Speaker of the House than Kevin McCarthy. Kevin McCarthy couldn't keep his word. He made an agreement in January regarding the way Washington would work, and he violated that agreement. We are $33 trillion in debt. We are facing $2.2 trillion annual deficits. We face a de-dollarization globally that will crush Americans, working class Americans. Kevin McCarthy is a feature of the swamp. He has risen to power by collecting special interest money and redistributing that money in exchange for favors. We are breaking the fever now, and we should elect a speaker who's better.
Who should it be? Who should it be?
Then you said last night that Steve Scalise was a name that you floated to potentially be speaker. Where do things stand right now? If not McCarthy, then who?
Well, you know, the stages of grief, I think, are in progress right now with some of my colleagues. I think there was a stage of denial, and I've certainly experienced a good amount of their anger, and now we appear to be headed toward bargaining. I think the world of Steve Scalise. I think he'd make a phenomenal speaker.
Are you afraid of getting expelled? Are you afraid of getting expelled?
I'm afraid of $33 trillion in debt crushing the working people in my district. I'm afraid of the dollar losing its status as the global reserve currency. If they want to expel me, let me know when they have the vote.
Has anyone talked about that with you?
45 days left before we.
Sorry, go ahead.
We've got less than 45 days left before you have to pass a budget, which is something that you've been wanting to do. Doesn't this just completely paralyze the House? I mean, we could see 15 more rounds.
I don't think we will. I think Kevin McCarthy should take a hint. After 15 ballots to become speaker, after 8 months of a failed speakership, and after removal in this historic manner, I think we should move on and find somebody else. What's paralyzed the House of Representatives has been the failure of Speaker McCarthy. What paralyzed the House of Representatives was not taking up appropriations bills. We left for a 6-week vacation while the appropriations process hung in the balance. And because I forced these people to take a few votes, you think I'm paralyzing the House of Representatives? I think the House of Representatives has been paralyzed for the last several decades as we've refused to pass a budget and as we've governed by continuing resolution and omnibus bill. So I think that this represents the ripping off of the Band-Aid, and that's what we need to do to get back on track.
Will you be putting yourself forward for the speakership?
Absolutely not. I have no desire to be Speaker of the
How do you
What was going through your head when the vote gavelled down and it was official McCarthy wasn't Speaker?
We got to move to the next step. You know, we are not at the end of this process, okay? At most, we're approaching halftime. We've got to be able to assemble a governing coalition. We have to build from a place of trust. The reason Kevin McCarthy went down today is because nobody trusts Kevin McCarthy. Kevin McCarthy has made multiple contradictory promises, and when they all came due, he lost votes of people who maybe don't even ideologically agree with me on everything. Take, for example, my colleague from South Carolina, Ms. Mace. She has different views than I do on a variety of subjects, but what we had in common, Kevin McCarthy lied to all of us.
He's already what has he said to you?
Well, here's what I would say. Here's what I say. I think a lot of members are going to reflect on their thinking after this historic moment. I think anything that people have said before the McCarthy ouster is probably bearing less weight than the way people may be thinking about these questions after the McCarthy ouster.
You had some positive comments about Steve Scalise yesterday and today. Will you yourself nominate Steve Scalise for Speaker of the House?
Maybe. I want to hear from him. I mean, I'm not here to make a judgment on where Mr. Scalise stands with his rehabilitation and recovery. I would give him the deference to be able to decide whether or not he'd like to put himself forward as a candidate, but he'd be the type of person that I could see myself supporting. There are many people, though. I could see myself supporting Tom Emmer. I could see myself supporting Mike Johnson of Louisiana. I could see myself supporting Jody Arrington of Texas. I could see myself supporting Kevin Hearn of Oklahoma. And there are even people outside of the United States Congress like Lee Zeldin, who are well thought of across every aspect of our conference, and I may give Lee Zeldin a call and see if he's interested in the gig.
You've gotten the Speaker ousted. What's next?
Well, next we got to elect a new speaker. Sorry, guys.
Are you running for governor of Florida in 2026?
No.
Excuse me. If nobody you support can get to 18, how long does this go on? What do you say to Mr. Trump, who says you can't put the infighting in politics?
Hi, Allie. Hi, Allie.
I wasn't happy. It's like a cut with a dull blade, dude. I mean, it wasn't a happy feeling. But I know in my heart I was doing the right thing. And last night, you know, my daddy used to say, you know what I do at night? I said, what's that, Daddy? He said, I sleep. And I slept like a baby last night.
Speed is worthwhile. It's not worth misleading people. It's not worth misleading people on both sides of the aisle. For me, it's not ideological. It's about having a leader in our nation who will tell the truth, who you can trust. And that's what the American people deserve. I am open to a number of folks up here. We'll have that discussion and we'll figure out who will be the next speaker. But from my perspective, as a woman up here, I want someone who's going to be honest. And if we say we're going to help women in this country, we ought to do it. If we say we're going to rein in spending, if we say we're going to have a budget, now we're going to disagree on the numbers, both sides will, but that's worthy of a debate. If we say we're going to have a budget, we need to do it. If we say we're going to have 12 separate spending bills and give the power of spending back to the people, we ought to do it. But that's not what happened here, and that's why we're in the situation today. If he were to continue to be Speaker, there would be chaos that would continue because he's not been honest with either party.
So I made some comments to my colleagues back there. I said, okay, so what is the next step? Well, let's find a Speaker. That's the next step. Well, who? Who is that person? My humble opinion, there's 222 Republicans up there. There's 190 of them that are not moving away from Kevin McCarthy. They're just not. There is no one. If you look at the names that have been talked about, whether it's Tom Emmer, Jim Jordan, all these others, they were all up there advocating on behalf of Kevin McCarthy.
Right-wing Republicans have to solve the problems that right-wing Republicans create, okay? And so the civil war within the Republican Party has nothing to do with us. I voted 15 times for Hakeem Jeffries for Speaker, and I will vote 15,000 more times for Hakeem Jeffries as Speaker, unless he asks me to do something else. Yes.
America will be secure and the world will be more peaceful.
Thank you. And I'm going to interrupt with some breaking news. Mr. Vice President, Democrats have joined with Republicans to oust Kevin McCarthy from the speakership of the U.S. House of Representatives. Clearly, this is developing as we are talking right now, but with a development like this, what sort of a message do you see something like this sending to other countries about the stability of U.S. government? I mean, the Speaker of the House is arguably the most powerful member of that chamber. And what do you think this says to countries who are looking at what's happening here?
Well, let me say that chaos is never America's friend. And it's never a friend of American families that are struggling. And I'm deeply disappointed that a handful of Republicans would partner with all the Democrats in the House of Representatives to oust the Speaker of the House. But I expect before the week is out, there'll be more votes on who will be elected Speaker of the House. And I expect that most of the Republicans in the Congress will vote again for Kevin McCarthy, the way they voted 15 times over earlier in the year. What troubles me about this is that none of this, and maybe the days and weeks that this will now capture the Congress of the United States, is doing anything to solve the challenges that American families are facing in this economy. None of it's doing anything to secure the southern border of the United States. None of it's doing anything to lower the cost of energy that's putting a tremendous burden on American families. So I think Congress will continue to work its will. But for my part, if I'm President of the United States, I'm going to work really hard to create an environment in Washington, D.C. Where we focus men and women at both political parties on the challenges facing our country. I mean, I said at the very beginning, Meg, the reason I'm running for president is not because I want to find out what it's like to work in the White House. Right? Been there, done that. I'm running for president of the United States because I think the country's in a lot of trouble. American families are hurting. The world's becoming more dangerous by the day. And political performance art in Washington, D.C. does little to address the issues the American people are facing. If I'm president of the United States, we'll focus on the needs and the challenges and the opportunities and the future of the American people. So help me God.
Kem Lager-Dove. Yes. Yay. Capter. Yay.
The office of Speaker of the House of the United States House of Representatives is hereby declared vacant.
Well, I mean, it's the first time that a sitting speaker's ever been ousted, so it's unprecedented in that sense. There have been earlier moments in American history where there's been a great deal of trouble electing a speaker, particularly around the 1850s. There was a great deal of trouble there, and votes, finally getting people in the chair. I mean, it's a sign, I think, if history is any guide at all to this, it's a sign of a party in disintegration. I mean, that's what's happening, and it's melting down, and that's pretty clear. That's the older history. The more recent history, I think, is that what we're seeing today is the latest installment in the ever continuing coup d'état by Donald Trump. I mean, that's what we're seeing. And it's pretty clear that he's the hidden hand in a lot of this stuff that's been going on. That I think probably the next step would be a shutdown, which is really what they're probably aiming for. They wanted to get McCarthy out of there in part because he stood in the way of that. Bunch of reasons, but that's part of it. And it's the politics of chaos.
Mr. Speaker, my friend from Oklahoma says that my colleagues and I who don't support Kevin McCarthy would plunge the House and the country into chaos. Chaos is Speaker McCarthy.
I do think this is a triumph for Donald Trump. Anytime that you have the order being overthrown, I mean, he's managing to do now what he couldn't do in January 6th with his takeover the House of Representatives, and doing it with his own people. You don't have to have crazy shamans with crazy horns doing it. You can do it with Matt Gaetz. From the Freedom Caucus to the MAGA people, it's been the same thing, which is the hard right of the Republican Party has overthrown in one way or another one speaker after another, forced him to resign, as in the case of Boehner. This is the politics of cannibalism, which even Gingrich didn't like. They're eating their own. And the Republican Party a long time ago, really in the early 90s, decided that it was going to be able to take on this crazy kind of politics and be able to ride it to victory all of the time. And it would never catch up with them, but it caught up with them with Trump in a big way. My guess is that they'll try to find someone else who will command the respect of the entire Republican caucus and put it through, ram it through. But that's only the prelude. That would be only the prelude to what I think is their ultimate idea, which is to shut down the government and blame it on Biden. I'll try to blame it on Biden, and not even that. I mean, just shut it down. I mean, we're sort of at Batman politics here. I mean, this is kind of like the Joker. I mean, it's beyond anything that I'm capable of talking about, because I only talk about the past and history, and it's never been like this before. But there is a certain nihilistic quality to what they're doing. However, there's also genius in the madness, because the madness is about creating as much chaos as possible, and then then the Trump people will step in. McCarthy was in an impossible position, but in the end, he is going to, he does vaguely believe in the country, and he believes in politics up to a point, but then he wasn't going to go that far. At the very last minute over the weekend, he brokered the deal. Look, there are a lot of other reasons that are going on here that are personal as well as political. I mean, there's an ethics investigation of Matt Gaetz going on here about things that he was let off from in the courts, but the House Ethics Committee has a higher standard. I mean, he'd love to get rid of that. And getting rid of McCarthy may have been a way to do that as well. There's many, scenarios within scenarios going on here. If this is a prelude to shutdown, historically, shutdowns have not been very productive for the party that shuts down the Congress. I mean, this happened in the 90s, which is really the beginning of this history in some ways with Gingrich. And, the Republicans unleashed Gingrich thinking that he would do a good job against the Democrats. And then he decided to take the whole country down with him with two shutdowns that basically reelected Bill Clinton in 1996. So if you're going back on that precedent, if I was a Democrat, I'd say go ahead. The only problem is that we have to live with the effects of a government shutdown, which are very, very dire. And you don't want that to happen. You don't want to be the party that benefits from that, because everybody's going through a disaster, much worse now even than in the 90s.